job. Everything we do, everything we experience, everything we do, every motion currently is based on our memories and archaic points of view. It's like we have this fossilized old creatures in our head talking to us, carrying the messages for generations that seem like they should be wisdom, but it's actually dogmas, it's beliefs, it's a myriad of perceptions that shape our experience of life. I tend to imagine like a giant, ugly, dark octopus with thousands of tentacles in my head, and every tentacle is touching every experience of life, thus covering it with slime. When I feel I am thinking about how to do something or about what something is, any concept I have of that life, thing, experience, and I notice my thought is contemplating on it in a way, figuring it out, projecting something onto it, experiencing it as something, I know this is already my past influencing my now moment. How can we experience life without touching it, yet fully being submerged in it? And it's the first step is by observation of our thought process and how it wants to touch and influence and change everything. But when we move beyond that touching with thoughts and listening to thoughts, life becomes so simple. All the dogmas, all the things that we worry about disappear. Let's say even the empathy that used to create a barrier for us, because by perceiving others it was easy to lose sense of self, and then instead of living life we left all these impressions everybody else left upon us. But at some point, as we learn how to become a walking and talking meditation, that dissolves and life unfolds very pure and very beautiful in front of our eyes, and very surprising, because when we're in the flow, we're no longer that spasm of motion caused by our egos that were also guided by the fossilized creatures in our head, producing internal dialogue since we were children, carrying all the archaic wisdom of our ancestors, because it was given from grandmother to granddaughter and so forth for many, many centuries. And that programming becomes the algorithm that creates our life. So this is why For some people, it's it's easy to create abundance at all times because it's in that programming. For some, it's easy to create beautiful relationships. For some, something else, because that also is within the programming. But with that, there is a lot of debris, and when we let go of all those debris and everything, now we're all of a sudden free to move as a river moves, without carving the path, without using any will or strength to carve the path of that river or the stones that the river will flow through. The stones are actually all those beautiful and all kinds of experiences of life that we glide through, we just pass through, and each one of them is purifying us, because we're also not taking it with us as we do now, or fossilizing it within us, because we're flowing like water, moving, and we all have this unique imprint, this unique energy, this unique way of being, the one that's underneath the fossilized archaic dogmas and beliefs we have. And this is what it's called a pure divine expression. This is when we flow instead of act upon our ego produced impulses. And it's the simplicity of also the tantric path that teaches us to experience through all the tattvas this present moment, no matter where we are, in the middle of our little cubicle, in the middle of our city that's polluted and ugly, or anywhere in the world. It is about the realization that that edges, that sense of self we have been imposed to, it's healthy only to a certain extent. But if we want to move beyond the concepts of what life is and experience infinity and experience the divine, we must dissolve in a way and include within us, dissolve those edges of self, of our sense of self, to include the entire existence, to include every movement, every motion, every part of creation. And when you look at another being, when you start seeing that eternity, divinity is touching you through that being, this to me is the beginning of Tantra. And that cannot happen if we're still governed by fossilized voices and creatures in our head. It happens in complete internal stillness, and one that doesn't have boundaries or definition of what boundaries are. And this is not just another concept to perceive, but we all have to look in our hearts and allow it to come to life, to become alive within our heart.